Good evening. Before we begin, I need to make a disclaimer. It's a note on truth. All named individuals in this script are real. All cited events and statements are documented from public sources and personal accounts. While this script speculates, the performer speculates explicitly and marks these speculations as such. This show does not claim to know what happened. It claims what happened is worth asking. That distinction is important. Keep it keep it in mind. And please respect the families that are involved over the topics over the next 3 nights, maybe 4. Paranoid times. Ladies and gentlemen, something strange has been happening with our scientists. It's not just a recent thing. It's been going on for a while. So let's begin. What happens to people who know too much? What happens when scientists standing between us and catastrophe starts dropping one by one under circumstances that don't quite add up? When official explanations are so thin you can see right through them. I've been sitting with this story for a long time, pulling threads, reading case files, talking to people who are very careful about what they say and where they say it. And what I found, what I'm going to lay out for you over the next few nights, should make you angry. It should make you ask questions. And it might just make it hard to sleep. I want to warn you that there are things that might trigger you here. There are things that might make you sad. Over the course of this investigation, I have heard some unusual things. Before we start with what's currently going on, we need to go back. We need to go way back. I'm Denny, and this is Paranoid Times. Let's get to it. Before we get into individual cases, I wanted to give you the frame. Because I know some of you are already thinking, here we go, another conspiracy rabbit hole. And I want to be straight with you about what I'm claiming tonight and what I'm not. I am not telling you that every death on my list was a murder. I am not telling you there's one shadowy organization running a global hit squad against scientists. What I am telling you is this. When you line these cases up side by side, the picture that emerges demands serious, honest scrutiny. And that scrutiny has not happened, not from the press, not from the governments, and not from the institutions that were supposed to protect these people. So let's start with scale. In the years between 2001 and 2005, 4 years, more than 40 microbiologists and biological researchers died. Accidents, suicides, natural causes. That's the official accounting. 40 people in 4 years. And these were not grad students. These were people with government clearances. people working on biodefense contracts, experts in anthrax and in plague bacteria and emerging infectious diseases, people whose knowledge had direct national security implications. Now, is the 40 deaths in 4 years statistically unusual for a professional population that large? That's a fair question, and we'll address it later. This skeptical case deserves to be heard. But here's what I'll say right now. The specific nature of some of these deaths, the specific timing, the specific things these people knew, that's where the statistics stop being comforting. Tonight we'll focus on the biological side. Tomorrow, day 2, we'll go into nuclear science and into the modern cases. And you will hear testimony that was told to me from people with direct personal knowledge of things that have never been publicly discussed. For a moment, I want you to know that I have the video and the audio. But to protect these people, I will be reading their parts and my part. Maybe once we get all this stuff figured out, I will release those interviews. But to protect them and their families, I have changed their names. And I feel a need to protect them. I hope you understand this. But tonight's chapter starts in September 2001, because that's where this modern chapter of our story begins. It begins with anthrax. October 2001, barely a month after the World Trade Center attacks, letters laced with weapon-grade anthrax began arriving at the offices of U.S. senators and major news organizations. 5 people died. 17 were infected. The country is terrified, and the FBI launches what becomes one of the longest, most expensive investigations in its history. And then, within months, the scientist with the most relevant knowledge of anthrax weaponization starts dying. The first name, Dr. Benito. November 2001, an expert in infectious disease at the University of Miami Medical School, was found comatose near his car in a parking lot. His family said he had been beaten. Police found no evidence of an attack. He died days later. Official cause, heart attack. The same month, Dr. Don Wiley, a Harvard microbiologist, one of the world's leading authorities on how the immune system fights viral infections, which means he understood better than anyone alive both how to stop a pathogen and how a pathogen might be engineered to invade a response. He inherited a charity dinner in Memphis. His car was found on a bridge over the Mississippi River. While he was gone, his body was recovered 6 days later, 60 miles downstream. It was ruled an accident. The theory, he stopped on the bridge, slipped, fell in at night, in formal wear, on a bridge with no pedestrian walkway. Why'd he get out? Could he have been meeting somebody? His colleagues didn't buy it. Nobel laureate Jack Sturminger said publicly it was completely out of character. Wiley was described as a meticulous, physically fit, and was not heavily drinking that evening. By accident it was. Case closed. Vladimir Petesky, also November 2001. This is one of the most significant names in post-Cold War intelligence history. He was a former director of the Soviet Union Institute for Applied Microbiology when he defected to Britain in 1989. He gave Western intelligence the most detailed picture they have ever seen of the Soviet bioweapons program. He told them about a plague bacteria engineered to resist every known antibiotic, about enhanced smallpox, about a delivery system that was designed to kill millions. He was the most important bioweapons defector of his era. And in November 2001, he had a stroke at home. He was 64, and his death received almost no press coverage. Excuse me. And then Ian Langford, February 2002, a British microbiologist specialized in environmental risk and disease, was found dead in his home. His body was wedged under a chair. He was half naked, and he was 40 years old. Cause of death, hyperthermia. Hyperthermia in his own home at 40 and wedged under a chair with a stove going. I want you to hold on to all four of those names in your head. Q, Wiley, Petesky, Langford, as we keep going. Because this is just an opening of the list. If there's one case that towers above all the others, one that has generated more books, more documentaries, more official inquiries, and more unanswered questions than any other, is the death of Dr. David Kelly. David Kelly was a weapons inspector for the United Nations, Senior Biological and Chemical Weapon Advisor to the UK Ministry of Defence. A man who had personally visited bioweapons facility in the Soviet Union, walked through Saddam Hussein's weapons program on the ground. He was arguably Britain's foremost expert on weapons of mass destruction. July 17th, 2003, he went for a walk near his home in Oxfordshire and didn't come back. He was found dead in the woods. His wrists were slashed. Cause of death, bleeding from a severed artery, combined with an overdose of painkillers and an underlying heart condition. It was ruled a suicide. Official inquiries held. Case was closed. That sounds wrong to me. It should sound wrong to you. Except it wasn't closed. Here's why. In the months before his death, Kelly had been a confident source for a BBC journalist who reported that the British government's intelligence dossier, the one that said Iraq had weapons of mass destruction ready to deploy within 45 minutes, had been, in Kelly's word, sexed up. His words, not mine. That the government had taken thin and ambiguous intelligence and had inflated it to justify going to war. When the BBC story aired, the government went into full crisis mode. They launched an investigation. And somehow, In this dispute, Kelly's name leaked as a source. He was publicly identified. He was called before a um, committee, questioned on television. A quite private scientist who had spent his career in the shadows, suddenly exposed and humiliated before his entire country. And 2 days after his testimony, he walked into the woods. Now the official inquiry was the Hunting Inquiry. That's what they called it. Lord Hunting concluded it was a suicide. But here's where the medical community stepped in. And I want to be precise because this matters. 3 British surgeons, not conspiracy theorists, not podcasters, not YouTubers, 3 credentialed surgeons wrote a letter published nationally arguing that the amount of blood found at the scene was, in their words, extremely unlikely to cause death. Severing the artery alone almost never causes fatal blood loss in the otherwise healthy person. The blood loss documented at the scene was described as minimal. Pharmacologist Dr. Andrew Walt pointed out that the level of coproxamol, the painkiller, found in Kelly's system was less than a third of what typically needed for a fatal overdose. So you'd have insufficient blood loss and insufficient drug levels, and the conclusion is still suicide. In 2010, a group of doctors formally petitioned the UK Attorney General to reopen the inquest. The petition was denied. And here is the detail that I keep coming back to. The full post-mortem report on David Kelly is classified. I can't get it. You can't get it. Most news agencies can't get it. We just can't get it. It will not be released for 70 years. 70 years, guys. This was a blanket classification. We do it here in the United States. They do it in Canada. When they don't want you to know something, you don't know. 70 years, a man dies in his field. Doctors raise specific documented forensic concerns about the cause of death, and the records that could settle the question are locked away until the people asking the questions are also dead. That's not transparency. That's the opposite of transparency. Kind of feels like the UFO stuff, doesn't it? Now, I want to take a short break and let the chat run a little bit and go smoke. And then I want to come back and get into the nuclear side of this. I want to tell you about a conversation I had with a guest who spent 15 years inside Federal Science Administration and who agreed to talk to me very openly and very carefully. Give me about 3 minutes. All right, I'm back. The person I interviewed name was Dr. Well, I changed his name, but we'll call him Dr. Rask right now. The question I asked him, in your 15 years in the Federal Science Administration, did you ever see anything that made you believe that researchers were actively being monitored, not by their own agencies, but by outside interest? He said, yes, though I want to be precise. Their surveillance of scientists with security clearance is legal and expected. What I witnessed was something different. Colleagues described the sense that their work was drawing interest from parties outside their institutional chain of command. I asked him to give me an example. He said, a colleague who worked in an aerosol dispensing modeling, a civilian, and weapons application overlapped in that field. For reference, they use this for like pesticides and things like that. He told me in the mid-90s that he had found evidence his internal communications had been read by someone outside of his agency. He recognized it from the patterns and responses he was getting from external contacts. Someone knew things that only had been discussed internally. I asked him if he reported it. He said, to whom? If the surveillance is coming from within the national security apparatus, reporting to that apparatus is meaningless. He left his position within a year. I then asked, I said, let's talk about 2001 to 2005 microbiologist deaths, 40 plus scientists. I asked him, I said, do you think there's a systematic explanation? He said, I think it's plausible in the right word. I don't have evidence that the deaths were coordinated. What I do believe is that the national security community was in extreme anxiety during that period. The anthrax attacks were involved. There was genuine fear about domestic and foreign actors and what they might have access to that environment. People who held specific knowledge, and they become liabilities. I said, liabilities to whom specifically? He said, that depends on who they knew. If someone could independently collaborate or contradict the conclusion that anthrax in those 2001 letters came from the U.S. government facility, which the FBI ultimately concluded, then that person had enormous value to multiple parties and enormous danger. I said, the FBI ultimately blamed Dr. Bruce Evans, a Fort Detrick scientist who died in 2008 before he could be charged under contested circumstances. He said, yes, another name for your list. I said, what about the Soviet side? The scientists after the collapse? He said, that story is in some ways more alarming than the Western cases. You had tens of thousands of biological weapon scientists suddenly unemployed. Western governments were desperate to pay them, keep them away from rogue states. Some arrangements worked, some did not. And some of those scientists, the ones who knew the most dangerous things, turned up dead. Sometimes after being approached, sometimes after refusing to be approached. I named the scientists, the persons who knew about what really happened in 1979 when anthrax leaked from Compound 19. He said many of them died before they could talk to Western journalists. Others talked and then went quiet. I'll leave you to interpret that. My last question Do you believe any government has active, ongoing programs to eliminate scientists? He answered, I believe every major intelligence service has, at some point, concluded that removal of specific individuals was worth the operating cost. I believe scientists are not exempt from that calculus. Whether this constitutes a coordinated program or series of individual decisions, I generally do not know. What I know is the question is worth asking. I went on to say that's a careful answer. He answered back, I'm a careful man, and I'm still alive. That's when he hung up. Now, as I said, I could play that audio, and I may. But I believe he knows more, and I'd like to find out more. And I don't want to expose him. I verified him. I vetted him. But what he said last there about if there are specific, if governments have an active system for eliminating scientists, I want you to keep that in your head. I want you to think about that over the next 3 nights. Because something or something is removing the people who think for us, who do the things that we can't do or must do. Now, the microbiologist gets most of the attention, but the nuclear side of the story is just as dark and in some ways harder to untangle because the secrecy is even more absolute. I'm going to run through a few names now, and we'll go deeper into some of these tomorrow. Dr. Jared Bull. He's a Canadian, possibly the most gifted ballistics engineer of the 20th century. He designed Project Babylon for Saddam Hussein, a super gun, essentially a massive artillery piece capable of putting a projectile into orbit or delivering a warhead to Israel. March 1990, he was shot 5 times and a quarter outside his Brussels apartment. Never solved. The consensus among intelligence analysts, it was Mossad, but they never confirmed it, and they never denied it. I can't pronounce that name. Never could. Yehid Ahmad, I think it was. He was an Iraqi nuclear physicist. He was the head of an Iraqi nuclear program. And in the late 70s, assassinated in his Paris hotel room in 1980. A cleaning woman found him in the morning again. It was once again attributed to Mossad. And then there are the Iranian scientists. And that's where it gets undeniable. Because they weren't ambiguous accidents. These were open professional target killings. There was another one in 2010. A nuclear physicist professor had a bomb attached to his motorcycle. Another one in 2010. They were attacked the same day. Men on motorcycles. Magnetic bombs attached to the cars in traffic. Another one in 2011. Shot outside his daughter's kindergarten. He worked on high voltage switches, components, using nuclear detonators. It just goes on and on and on. Now we know why most of these ones in Iraq were removed. Israel didn't want them building nuclear weapons. The United States, the UK, Canada at the time didn't want them building nuclear weapons. To us, this was understandable. But it also showed us that scientists technically were a weak link. What I'm trying to show is that when they want to stop something, they go after the scientists, because the scientists are the ones that invent, create, build. And this plays a role into what's happening now. Those were 4 scientists in 2 years, all killed the same way. No arrest ever. Now here's what I'm leaving with this tonight. I have a list, 47 names, scientists in sensitive fields, dead or missing, between 2001 and 2015. I've gone through every single case. 31 of them have official explanations that on their own seem plausible enough. A heart attack here, a car accident there. But when you read them together, one after another, you start to hear something, like a signal, just at the edge of what you can make out. Tomorrow night we'll go further. We'll talk about what these scientists have in common in their fields, their recent activities, their communications, who's been asking about them. We hear from people with direct knowledge of things that have never been discussed publicly. I don't know why. I mean, if I could find out this information, if I can gather this information, why didn't I talk about this? Now, all of this plays a role into the scientists we currently have missing. The UFO scientists, the UFO whistleblowers. That list is growing more and more every day. I want to show you a pattern. That regardless if it is a government, a group, or aliens, that they go after the scientists. Now, I gotta switch forms here. Hold on a minute. I don't know why it's asking me to do that. Hold on one second. Now, we're going to jump forward. I think I got the right file now. That ain't it. Hold on. Here we go. What we should go ahead and start talking about is the 13 people, the scientists, the generals, the researchers, the whistleblowers that have died or disappeared in the last 3 years. And the White House is calling it, and I'm quoting directly here, pretty serious stuff. Pretty serious stuff. Thank you, President Donald Trump. Always good to have the intelligent community's finest analytical minds on the case. That's from a press conference on April 24th, 2026. A reporter stood up and said, and again, I'm not paraphrasing, There are now 10 American scientists who have either gone missing or died since 2024. They all reportedly had access to classified nuclear and aerospace material. Is anybody investigating this? And the White House press secretary said, and I want you to hold your drinks for this, I haven't spoken to our relevant agencies about it. I will certainly do that. Why not? It's been all over the news. This is her job. She hadn't spoken to anyone about it, about the dead scientists and the missing general and the UFO whistleblowers who died before he could testify. She just hadn't got around to it. And I want to add, I wrote this last night, this part of it, and another one was found today. Another one was found after that. So I think the total is up to about 14 and 15. Now we're just talking scientists and a few whistleblowers, and of course the general. But there's many others. They keep stacking, and I don't think they're done yet. So, for the next hour or so, I'm going to try to go through every single case, every name, every disappearance, every bullet wound, factory reset bomb, and a lake where a body turned up 3 months after it was supposed to. I know I started this show off kind of funny, but there was a reason. I wanted to show you that this has been going on and that there's more. Even after this, even after we cover the topics that happened back then and now, something dark is out there. Something is being planned. And then, this is the bit I want you to stay up for. We are going to talk about the three-body problem, not the Netflix show. The actual theory. And by the end of the night, I think you're going to understand why those two things.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Apparently Siri wants to help. But anyway. Connected in a way that either explains everything or means I have completely lost the plot or my mind. Which honestly are not mutually exclusive possibilities. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started with this part. First, let's establish something. The federal government. America's federal government. The most powerful institutional apparatus in human history. It is currently conducting what they call a holistic review of why scientists keep disappearing. Holistic review. Not an investigation. Not a task force. A holistic review. Which is what you say when you want to sound like you're doing something while not legally committing to doing anything. Now, before I get into names, I want to give you some context. Because the story has layers. I want you to understand why I call it paranoid. When I say paranoid times, I mean that seriously. to follow the thread, to ask if these things that look unrelated, in fact, are related. Paranoia is a superpower, but it's also a trap. Tonight, we're going to do both. Here's what we know for certain before we start. All 13 individuals in this story had some form of access to information that was either classified aerial research, nuclear weapons development, or exotic physics. And here's where it gets spicy. Unidentified area phenomenon, UAPs, UFOs. If you're not embarrassed by the abbreviation. Personally, I've always hated it. Three of them were connected to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Two worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory, the facility that built the first atomic bomb. One was a major general who commanded an Air Force research laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the facility most famously associated with the storage from the 1947 Roswell crash. And one was scheduled to give testimony in a federal whistleblower case about UFOs 2 weeks before he died. I want to add that the lady that was found dead today was also scheduled to provide whistleblower testimony in the same case at the same time. Now, is that a conspiracy? I don't know. It might be. Or it might be what one former FBI agent called, and I am quoting, Occam's razor reasons. ORR. It's Boring's explanation, coincidence, mental health crisis, and random violence. That's the honest answer. And I'm giving you the honest answer at the top of the show because I think you deserve it. Because I am going to spend however long asking you to consider the alternative. And I want to be clear that the alternative is not necessarily true just because it's more interesting. But it is more interesting. For a minute, I want to check chat. I'm sorry you ate something bad. Maybe we'll see you tomorrow. Hold on one second, guys. Alright, I had to check to make sure our live stream was up and running and everything was fine. The other night, when I started talking about things, stuff got a little crazy, and internet went down, and I don't know. I really want to get through this tonight because I had been working on the other part for quite a long time and never got around to talking about it, and this stuff started happening, and I want to add it because in some weird way I think it's all connected. I think something or something is trying to control the destiny of the human race, or have some influence over it. I mean, I agree that, like I was talking, that Iraq, Saddam Hussein and stuff, they didn't need nuclear weapons. And that something should have been done. And it basically proves my point that if we can stop them, we will. If something can stop them, they will. If something wants us to stop them, then they might make us do it. And we're seeing evidence of that more and more. Now, with what's going on here, I'm wondering if something else has stepped in. But let's get to it. I don't want to ruin it for you guys. I don't. Real quick, my phone wanted to update. Seems like everything in the world wants to work right now. All right. Ning Lee. She passed away July 27th, 2021. Her age was 78. We'll start here because she is the oldest case in the story. She, on our conspiracy board, she's the starting point of this news cycle. And because her specialty is the most relevant to everything that follows. She was a physicist. She worked at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Great place if you ever go. And her area of research was, I want you to hear this clearly, anti-gravity. Not theoretical anti-gravity, applied anti-gravity. She was working on practical applications of creating gravitational shielding effect using superconducting materials rotating a magnetic field. This is the kind of research that, if it worked, would revolutionize aerospace. It would change propulsion. It would change everything. In 2014, she was struck by a car on the University of Alabama's campus. She suffered permanent brain damage. She lived for 7 more years in a diminished state and died in 2021 at age 78. Was she struck intentionally? I don't know, but it was ruled an accident. But she is case 1 in this pattern. By 2026, finally, this would attract the attention of the White House, the FBI, the Oversight Committee, and the President of the United States. Her anti-gravity research quietly disappeared with her. No major institution picked it up, and the files went wherever files go. Make a note of that. You can't find her work other than a few patents here and there. I looked. I hunted them. I find this stuff curious. I mean, when you read some of this stuff, you conjure up thoughts of things like the Dagalak and other stuff that supposedly we're working on in Germany. And this is how we've always been told that UFOs travel through space and around the Earth. Amy Estrich. She was 34 years old. She co-founded something called the Institute for Exotic Scientists in Huntsville, Alabama. Before her death, she gave interviews on podcasts, on record, in which she alleged that she and her team were being subjected to harassment, psychological warfare, as she called it, specifically designed to stop her work. Her work was on anti-gravity research, the same as our previous scientist. She died on June 11th, 2022, officially a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Her family. And I want to read this statement in full because I think it matters. said she was a marvelous, intelligent person who suffered from chronic pain. They said people should realize that scientists die also, and not to make much of this, and that the family's asking the public to let her daughter rest. And I think we should respect that. I also think we should note that a 34-year-old researcher in exotic physics who had explicitly stated on record that she believed someone was trying to stop her died 2 years later. And I think we should be honest about what it feels like to hold both of those things at the same time. I've been there. I know. Now let's move on to Michael David Hicks, who died July 30th, 2023, at age 59. Michael Hicks was a research scientist at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. He worked on the DART project. If you don't know, that's the mission that deliberately crashed a spacecraft into an asteroid to test planetary defenses. He also worked on Deep Space One. I want to add that the DART project, when they did this, it didn't behave the way they had hoped. Sure, it moved the asteroid, but it caused all of these particles to separate. They received a strange signal, from my understanding. Now, if something was alive on that asteroid, and we slammed something into it, could that be considered an act of war? I want you to hold on to that too. He died on July 30th, 2023, at age 59. No cause of death was ever made public. No statement from NASA. No statement from JPL. Nothing. And trust me, JPL likes to talk. They like to talk about everything. His daughter told CNN in April of 2026 that as of that date, 3 years after her father's death, not a single elected official, not a single federal agency had contacted her to ask her about it. 3 years. Nobody called. Nobody asked. When the story broke nationally in 2026, her father's name was suddenly everywhere. But up until then, silence. Official institutional silence. Michael David Hicks, JPL, Planetary Defense, Asteroid Tracking, dead at 59. Cause unknown. Nobody called. Now, let's take a moment and think about his daughter. She had grieved for 3 years. She had no idea. She probably had her own questions. I know I would. All of us would. Anyone listening to this later would. You know, your father dies, or your mom dies, or your brother or sister dies under mysterious circumstances. And the people that he worked for, say it was the government, say it was DPL, say it was NASA, say it was the White House, don't say a word. And you kind of move on. Still in the back of your mind. Still hurting, but you move on. And then suddenly, your father's name is plastered everywhere. The mental torment this lady must be going through right now. If you ever hear this, young woman, I apologize. I'm sorry. I apologize for the planet. Let's move on. Frank Mallard died July 4th, 2024, at age 61. He was JPL's principal researcher. The title principal at JPL is not given lightly. It is reserved, in their own words, for scientists making outstanding individual contributions to their field. He died on July 4th, 2024, in Los Angeles on Independence Day. He was 61 years old. There was no autopsy. There was no cause of death. No public statement from NASA. No public statement from JPL. Two NASA JPL scientists dead within 13 months of each other. Neither case or cause disclosed. No official comment. We are now count them, three JPL scientists deep in the story. And I want to pause here, and I want to acknowledge something. JPL employs thousands of people. Sure, scientists die. Causes of death are private. There is no legal obligation to disclose. Everything I have told you could be completely coincidental. I want you to hold on that thought as well. We'll be returning to it. Matthew James Sullivan. He passed away on May 12th, 2024, at age 39. This is the one that changes the temperature of the room. Matthew was 39 years old. He was a former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer. He was, according to the Congressman Eric Bursaw of Missouri, scheduled to testify as a federal whistleblower case about UFOs. Within 2 weeks of that scheduled testimony, he was dead. His official obituary did not list the cause of death. The congressman told Fox News that Sullivan died by suicide. He called it again, in his words, suspicious. Representative Bursaw then wrote to the FBI and urged them to investigate. Now, I want to be fair here. People who are scheduled to testify in federal court cases about classified matters are under enormous stress. The psychological burden of that is immense. People make tragic decisions under immense stress. This is true, and we should say it. But also, a man scheduled to testify about UFOs to the federal government died 14 days before his testimony, and the congressman who was going to receive that testimony calls it suspicious and wrote a letter to the FBI about it. Matthew Sullivan, 39 years old, gone. And everything with him. Nuno Lorio. I'm sorry. Let's call him Nuno. Died December 15th, 2025 at age 47. Nuno was a professor at MIT. He led the Plasma Science and Fusion Center, one of the most advanced clean energy research facilities in the world. His work on fusion energy was the holy grail of clean power. The science that, if cracked, would change the trajectory of human civilization. This would be something that an alien race would be interested in. If they don't want us to figure out these things and, be able to create limitless energy. These are the founding blocks for space travel. We need exotic materials that don't fly apart in space. We need something more than solid and fuel propulsion, whatever you want to call it. We need limitless energy. And this would also benefit the world. It would take us away from oil, coal, nuclear. Anyway, I'm sorry. He was shot at his home in Massachusetts on December 15th. He died from his injuries the following day. His killer has been identified, a former classmate from Portugal named Claudio Neves Valentin, who on December 13th also opened fire in a lecture hall at Brown University, killing 2 students, wounding 9 others. His body was later found in New Hampshire in a storage unit. I want to add that I have the audio from before he did that, and it's very strange. I don't know if the man was disturbed. I mean, he obviously was. But as he was explaining, he was giving some type of manifesto. It seemed like, to me, anyway. I mean, that's what it felt like. And he seemed to imply that this was planned. This was something he had to do. This was, I don't know. It just sounded really weird. Maybe in a few days we'll go over it, and maybe during a morning show or something. But and maybe I need your guys' ears to listen to it, because it does sound a little strange. But anyway, so this case appears on the surface to have a clear explanation. A disturbed individual with a grudge against former classmates, a former professor, a former friend. That's the official position. That's the most likely explanation. But Nuno was leading physics, fusion research. And fusion research, as you know, is anything about exotic physics, and that we are moving through tonight, and has connections to propulsion technologies, and is of very particular interest to certain parties. I'm not saying the shooter was sent. I'm saying, as a note for speculation, fusion, anti-gravity, plasma science, make a note. Now, there's a movie that I recommend people to go watch. It's called Saint. Go watch it. There's a little tidbit in there. It's from the 80s, I believe. But go watch it. Now we'll move on to Carol Grillmore. February 16th, 2026, at age 67. Carl was an astrophysicist at Caltech Infrared Processing and Analysis Center. He worked on NASA's NEOWISE mission and the NEO Surveyor, the Near Object Tracking. Asteroids, you know, the things that might hit us. The science of watching the sky for threats. I want to add, though, that it is believed that we have developed these things, the ability to watch, to see these things a long, long time ago. Back in the days of Reagan. Something else we should probably go over at some point. Because scientists have been hard at this. They've been looking extremely hard for things in the sky, while they tell us to keep our heads down. He was shot outside his home in February. Authorities ruled it as a homicide. The suspect was arrested. Someone who, police believed, did not know him. It was a random shooting. 2 astrophysicists shot within months of each other. One at MIT, one at Caltech. One in Boston. One in Los Angeles. Both had their causes of deaths established. Both appeared on the surface to have explanations. Random violence. A disturbed former classmate. just ordinary American guns crime statistics doing their grim work. And yet, here we are at a show called The Vanishing. Normally when people pass away, they don't make it on a show like this. They don't get tossed around different news channels. You don't have news channels going, at least trying to go into this type of in-depth look at these things. Journalism has went the way of the prophet. Jason Thomas, March 17th, 2026, age 45. Jason was an associate director of chemical biology for Norvest, Novar, Norvest, the pharmaceutical company. He was working on cancer treatments. He was reported missing in December 2025 after leaving his home in Wakefield, Massachusetts. Late at night, his body was recovered at Lake Quannapolit in March 2026, 3 months after he disappeared. I'm sorry for the pronunciations and stuff like that. I have very dry mouth tonight. If you guys have been watching and following along, I've been having some issues with my arm, and I've been taking a lot of antihistamines, and kind of gets me tongue-tied sometimes. Anyway, I do apologize. I'm not doing it on purpose. Anyway, police had found no evidence of foul play. Jason Thomas, in this case, in this list, that is the least obvious connection to aerospace, nuclear, and UAP research. He worked in a pharmaceutical chemistry. He worked on cancer drugs. The connection to the other cases at this point is unclear. But he seems to be on every list. Every journalist compiling these names included him. So I included him here. Because if there is a pattern, and I'm not saying there is, then the edges of this pattern are where you find out the pattern actually is. So why are journalists, the government, including a cancer scientist, could he be working on something else? It has long been thought that some of the stuff the pharmaceutical companies are using, oh God, I can't believe I'm saying this. They're using alien DNA. If some of you go back and you look at the things with the cough, you'll notice that people have weird growths and clots and stuff in their arms and their bodies when they pass away. This is mutations. This is deliberate mutations. Something is causing this. Something is causing our bodies to react this way. And this isn't old medications. This isn't old vaccines. This isn't old stuff. This is new stuff. Are they using alien biologics in medicine now? If David Grush was right, and a lot of people think he was, then they found alien biologics. And I'm sure in those crafts they found, there was alien medicine. Makes sense, right? Anyway, let's try not to speculate too much because I don't know. It just gets really weird, and the more I go into this, and there's a whole nother night of where this gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and you just can't get away from it. Um, anyway, and I'm sure tonight and tomorrow, we'll have new names to add to the list. Okay. The dead, at least are accounted for. The missing are something else. There are 5 missing persons in this story. 5 people who walked out the door and did not come back. And they are significantly weirder than the deaths. Anthony Chavez, a 79-year-old. He was the former employee of Los Angeles National Laboratory in New Mexico, the facility that built the first atomic bomb. He walked out of his home in Los Alamos on May 4th, 2025, and was not seen again. A 70-year-old man, former nuclear research facility, gone. A cynical explanation. A man of advanced age, possibly suffering from some form of cognitive decline, wandered away from his home. This happens. And it's tragic. The county sheriff issued a silver alert. The alert specifically designed for elderly missing people. The paranoid explanation. We'll get into that in part 2. Monica Rez, missing since June 22nd, 2025, age 60. This is the case I find most unsettling. And I want to describe it in precise detail because details matter. At least I'm going to try. Monica was 60 years old. She was an aerospace engineer. She served as a director of material processing at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a senior, prestigious role. She had also worked at Aerojet's Rocketdyne. It had developed and patented a specialized metal used for rocket manufacturing. She held multiple patents. She was, by any measure, at the top of her field. On June 22nd, 2025, she went hiking with a friend near Mount Waterman in the Angeles National Forest. They were 30 feet apart, 30 feet, 9 meters, the length of a school bus. Monica turned to a friend, made eye contact, smiled, waved to indicate she was fine. The friend turned back to the trail, looked back, and Monica was gone. Despite an extensive research operations, and we're talking a serious search here. This place is enormous, but they can comb that area. No trace of her has ever been found. Not a footprint, not an item of clothing, nothing. She was 30 feet from another person. She smiled and waved. And then she was not there. The House Oversight Committee flagged her case specifically for connection to JPL, the same institution as Michael David Hicks and Frank Mallard, was noted. 3 JPL scientists, 2 dead, 1 missing. None with an official explanation. Now there's something also I want to add. This woman had a cell phone on her. I know. There is cell service there. They should have been able to find her. I mean, my Apple phone knows where I'm at all the time. And I'm sure this lady had something like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch on her. So it was pinging off GPS signals. Mine does. This was strange. This bothers me. This causes me to toss and turn. Now, Melissa Casey, June 26, 2025, at age 53. Melissa was the administrative assistant for Los Alamos National Laboratory. The word administrative undersells her role. She had top security clearance. Break a minute. Yes, well, that's tomorrow. We will go into that tomorrow. I know one of those ancient alien guys personally, so anyway, I want to talk about that as well. But we will get to that. That will be tomorrow. This series will go on for 3 days or more. I mean, it won't go on for more. I mean, I got 3 days worth of material unless something else happens and it pops in together. But I'm sure we will see a lot more. 4 days after she vanished from the hiking trail in Los Angeles, Melissa disappeared from Mexico. When investigators searched her home, they found both her work phone and her personal phone. Both had been factory reset. Someone, possibly her, possibly someone else, had deliberately wiped both devices before she walked out the door. She was later spotted on a highway near Tulipia, New Mexico, and then she was gone. A factory reset phone is not the behavior of someone in the grip of a mental health crisis. Or it could be. People in the grip of certain kinds of paranoid episodes do destroy their devices. It happens. But it's also the behavior of someone who does not want to be tracked. Now, there is someone that's not on this list. And this goes back way before any of this started happening. There was an Asian physicist. He won the Nobel Peace Prize, or Prize for Science, or whatever, for physics. This is when I knew something strange was happening. He was found walking down a highway in Los Angeles with his mind wiped. He was confused. And as far as I know, he still has amnesia. This was done to him. They don't know how, but it was done to him. Anyway, we need to move on to Stephen Garcia. Stephen Garcia went missing, or he was missing since August 28th, 2025, at age 48. Stephen was a governmental contractor. Now, for a moment, I want you to think about how many government contractors out there go missing each day and pass away. There is an amazing amount of people that will not make it on this list, but are out there. There's no way I can track them all. There's no way anybody else can track them all. Anybody and their brother can have a cage number. A cage number is what DARPA and the DoD gives you
And that is one of the processes for becoming a government contractor. And there are a lot of contractors out there. There are a lot of contractors that handle individual parts of exotic projects and components, and make everything from bottles to complex computer components and stuff like what we're talking about. There's somebody that makes the equipment that these scientists use. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. He worked at Kansas City National Security Campus facility in Albuquerque, a facility that, according to his reporting, manufactures more than 80% of all non-nuclear components used in the United States military nuclear weapons. He is not a scientist. He was a property custodian, an overseer, according to anonymous sources, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment. Some of it is classified. He held top security clearances, broad access to the entire facility. On August 28, 2025 at 9 a.m., Stephen Garcia walked out of his Albuquerque home on foot. He was wearing a green camouflage shirt and shorts. He was carrying a handgun, and he has not been seen since. Albuquerque police noted that Garcia may be danger to himself. The anonymous source spoke directly to the Daily Mail, disputing this entirely. The man with access to classified nuclear weapon components walked away with the gun, missing. And then there is number 13, Major General William Neal McCaslin, February 27th, 2026. William is a retired United States Army Air Force general. He commanded the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson's Air Force Base, the facility who oversaw $2.2 billion science and technology program. He was at the center of some of the Pentagon's most advanced aerospace research, the things this man has seen. He is also a person who appeared in the 2016 WikiLeaks release of John Podesta's emails. And in those emails, his former leadership at the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson is specifically highlighted. For those of you who don't follow UFO lore, I'm sure most of you do though, the base is frequently associated with the recovery and storage of materials from the 1947 Roswell incident. This is where they kept the Roswell UFO. On February 27th, 2026, Neal walked out of his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He left behind his mobile phone. He left behind his prescription glasses. What he needed to see, he left behind his wearable devices. His hiking boots were missing. His wallet was missing. A .38 caliber revolver was missing. I couldn't imagine walking out without my glasses. Everything would look so alien to me. I mean, I just couldn't see. The FBI is now involved in the search. Congressman Eric Bussaw, I'm pretty sure I'm messing up his name again, or it's just not rolling out correctly, has stated publicly McCaslin has, he quotes, a lot of information about UFOs. His own family has pushed back on the UFO angle. His sister wrote on Facebook, "It is true that Neal had a brief association with the UFO community. This connection is not a reason for someone to abduct Neal. Neal does not have any special knowledge about ET bodies materials found from the Roswell crash. His sister also wrote, without any apparent sense of irony, that he does not have special knowledge about ET bodies or materials stored at Wright-Patterson. The ET bodies at Wright-Patterson, which she definitely stated exist, she just saying her brother doesn't know about them. Okay, how does she know they exist? And how does she know her brother doesn't? I don't know. I don't understand that. I mean, she publicly said this on Facebook. Like, she knows that the bodies of the aliens exist and that the materials exist, but her brother has not seen them. I don't know. There's a after rereading that. I mean, I remember typing it now, but after rereading it, there's like a little flag that's going up right there. Anyway, that's weird. That's really weird. I wonder if she'd talk to me. I don't know. I want to be absolutely clear. His family believes his disappearance has nothing to do with this, and they are asking for privacy and help finding him. That's what matters most, a family looking for somebody they love. But the sentence is there in black and white on Facebook. ET bodies, Wright-Patterson, and UFO craft. Well, that's the list. Well, that's the latest list. Like I said, there are two more people to add to this. Um, I don't know. Well, I mean, she's saying that she knows and he doesn't know or wouldn't know. I don't know. There's something weird there. All right, guys, we're getting into the next part. Um, but I'm taking a quick 3-minute break. I'll be right back. Type, chat, talk, whatever it is you want to do. Just please stick around. We're getting into the guts of this.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back.
Sure, you can send it to my email.
It's hold on 1 second. I'll give it to you.
Anyway, let's get back at it. 13 people, 8 dead, 5 missing. A White House press secretary who didn't get around to calling anyone or asking anybody anything. A president who called it pretty serious stuff. An FBI conducting a holistic review. A former FBI assistant director who said, and I love this, these are classified matters. We shouldn't be hearing about them if they are investigating. What do you mean we shouldn't be hearing about them? Hello, chat.
We're probably going to get into some theories that might be considered stupid,
but we need to talk about them because everyone else is talking about them. And maybe, just maybe, some of them might have something to do with this.
All right. I call this section the sane theories, and the theories that are probably right.
So let's do the responsible thing first. Here are the theories that make sense. The theories that former FBI officials, professional analysts, and trained investigators actually find plausible. I'm going to give them a fair hearing because I believe in honesty. And because the dumb theories are funnier by contrast. The United States has approximately 335 million people. All right, let me say it again. The United States has approximately 335 million people. Thousands of people hold security clearances. Thousands of people work for aerospace and nuclear facilities. People die and go missing all the time. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coppendieter, that's a weird last name, said it plainly on social media. This isn't some large-scale conspiracy to take off people who work in the science-based industry. If you look at each case individually, they have octans raising reasons supporting why they went missing or who killed them. There could be a reason why she's a former FBI agent. I'm just saying. She's not wrong, though. The cluster of cases that have attracted the attention span of roughly 2 years. America is a country where approximately 40,000 people are murdered every year, and around 600,000 are reported missing. The base rate, the bad things happen to people is unfortunately quite high. We all know this. We've all lost somebody. Carl was shot outside his home in Los Angeles. Los Angeles has a significant gun violence problem. People get shot there all the time. Nuno was killed by someone who apparently bore a personal grudge against him. That is the thing that happens to people. Jason was found in a lake with no evidence of foul play. Drownings happen. The statistics argument say that you are seeing a pattern because we are looking for one. The tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. It's cognitive error. We all do it. It's not evidence. This theory might be right. Part of me wants to think that we're all drawing conclusions. But there's another part of me that argues it. Over the years, I have seen a pattern, a strange pattern. None of us can argue this. You know, this has been a weird year. Last year has been a weird year. You know, suddenly everyone's seeing UFOs. Heck, they are seeing meteors that go down and go back up again. We've never seen that before. People show a strange interest in space. Things are getting strange. Theory B, espionage. This is a serious national security theory. This is being taken seriously by serious people. A former FBI assistant director said on News Nation, if it's not just random acts, it's modern day espionage. He believes, and he is a serious person with serious credentials, that a foreign intelligence service may systematically be targeting American researchers with access to classified information about aerospace and nuclear weapons. This is not crazy. This is not a crazy idea. This is what foreign intelligence services do. Russia's SVR and GRU have documented histories targeting Western scientists. China's Ministry of State Security runs active recruitment and, in some cases, elimination operations against researchers with access to sensitive technologies. The pattern here, if there is one, and I think there is, would fit a foreign intelligence operation designed to either recruit, extract, or neutralize individuals with access to specific categories of knowledge. These categories in question are exotic propulsion, anti-gravity research, plasma physics, nuclear weapon component manufacturing, and near-Earth object tracking. That list of categories is interesting. It's not the list of categories that you would target if you were trying to steal conventional weapon secrets. It is, however, exactly the list of categories that you would target if you were trying to understand whether America had reverse engineered technology from non-human sources, or if you were trying to acquire such technology yourself. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying the categories of research match. Now, theory C. They discovered something. This one is more speculative, and it adheres among serious researchers. Dr. Stephen Greer. I don't know how I feel about him, but anyway. A UFO researcher and former physician, not universally trusted in some academic communities, but is a significant figure in space. In this space, I mean. Has suggested that the missing individuals may have been targeted by, let me get this right, a transnational criminal organization that wants to keep certain research out of the public eye. And they may have disappeared because they, in his words, assets that could be interrogated. The implications is that some of these individuals discovered something in the course of their legitimate research that someone powerful did not want known, and that their disappearances are not random but specifically targeted. This theory requires a very sophisticated, a well-resourced operation, a consistent decision-making process across multiple events over multiple years, and a reason to care enough about what these specific individuals knew and what to do with it. It is a theory. It is not established, but given the specialties involved, anti-gravity, plasma physics, exotic materials, UAP research, it's not an insane theory to hold. Now, I do want to add, were the cases that happened in Los Angeles, and there's a couple of cases where they found this. There's these old research bases, old facilities. The United States government has a habit of, setting up a facility and abandoning it and just kind of sits out there. Well, I know an individual that likes to go and explore some of these sites. He walked up on one, and they had cameras everywhere, and they had drones, and they had like a drone automated system. It was wild, but it was not government. Somebody was doing that. Somebody had run power out there. Somebody was using this facility. I don't know. I think there are things going on out there that we do not know. There are people with interest that we do not know. I know I sound paranoid, but, well, think about where you are. Now, Theory D. The congressman believes that foreign has something called the foreign operation theory. Eric Broussard went on record to suggest that these cases may represent a coordinated foreign intelligence operation. He specifically cited the cluster of New Mexico cases. They all disappeared from Albuquerque or the surrounding areas. He noted the proximity to Los Alamos, National Laboratories, Kirtland, all of which are sensitive facilities. Albuquerque is, in question, a classified American research and one of the most sensitive sites in the country. Kansas City is, where Stephen worked. This is what New Mexico is. This is what the state was. This is where they did the Manhattan Project. It is one of the centers of American classified science. The theory is a foreign actor, he implied it was China, though not stating it explicitly, is operating in American Southwest, identifying and acting against individuals with specific knowledge. This is a real concern. This is the kind of thing that congressional oversight committees are supposed to investigate. And to be fair, he is trying to investigate it. This is what we pay them for. This is what they need to look into. If, other groups and organizations don't want to look into it, we hope that they will push it along and do this. This is what their job is. And now the White House is directing federal agencies to look into it. Whether they find anything is another question. Now let's talk about the theories that are probably wrong. Maybe. Sort of. But we are required to talk about them. And I want to be clear, I'm not mocking the people who hold these theories. I'm presenting them to you faithfully with their logic intact, because I think they deserve to be taken seriously as a cultural phenomenon, even if they cannot be taken seriously as factual claims.
And some of them generally are insane. The mothership rapture theory. I'm not making this one up. Following the disappearance of Monica, who vanished 30 feet from her companion while hiking, elements of the UFO community proposed that she was taken, not kidnapped by humans, but taken by a craft. The specific version of this theory holds that various missing scientists were removed from Earth by extraterrestrials and was protecting its secrets. The reverse engineering technologies at the facilities like Wright-Patterson. The ETs in this theory are tidying up, removing the humans who know too much. Neil's sister, perhaps aware of exactly this theory, specifically wrote on Facebook, "No sightings of motherships hovering above the mountains have ever been reported." For some reason, she felt it important to clarify this. I don't know why. I don't think if I lost my brother that I would want to play into that. I don't know. I cannot tell you how much I love that sentence exists. It is the most 21st century sentence I have ever read. No sightings of a mothership hovering above the Sardinia Mountains have ever been reported. And you can hear in it, she has read the internet. She has seen what people are saying, and she is directly addressing the mothership hypothesis. I found that remarkable. She's lost her brother, and she's saying the mothership didn't do it. She's saying he was not abducted by aliens. Or at least she doesn't think so. I don't understand why she felt the need to do that, though. Theory 2. This theory is significantly more sophisticated. It has a long history in America's paranoid culture going back to at least the alleged MJ-12 documents of the 1980s. The premise: there exists within the United States government a compartmentalized group, sometimes called a legacy programmer or programmee, that has had custody of recovering non-human technology since at least 1947. This group operates outside normal congressional oversight and is funded through black budget mechanisms, and has, over decades, occasionally found it necessary to silence individuals who threaten to expose its existence. David Grush, the intelligence officer who testified before Congress in 2023 about the UAP programs, used the phrase legacy programmees explicitly in his testimony. He claimed that such programmees existed and that he had spoken to individuals who had direct knowledge of them. In this theory, the missing and dead scientists are not victims of foreign intelligence operation. They are victims of a domestic one. People making them disappear are Americans in suit with clearances, doing what they've always done. If you don't know, I'm talking about the Men in Black, supposedly. The problem with this theory is that it requires organized capabilities of enormous operation sophistication. Multiple disappearances across multiple states over multiple years. That has also simultaneously failed to stop any public whistleblower who has ever testified in Congress. And if you can make Major General disappear from I can't even talk. Why can't you make David Grush from going to News Nation? Unless this is where it gets fractional. The testimony of the whistleblowers is also being controlled. It is part of the operation. A limited hangout. Release some truth to protect the bigger truth. I want you to notice what just happened. I followed the logic chain and explained everything and proved nothing. This is what conspiracy theories do. That is their superpower and their trap. But we all know that some conspiracy theories are not conspiracy theories at all, don't we? Now, I got to talk about this. Project Aquarius, the Blue Book Continual. This is deep lore theory, and it requires some background. Project Blue Book was the official U.S. Air Force investigation into UFOs from 1942 to 1969. It was officially concluded that with a finding that UFOs pose no national security threat and no evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. A subset of researchers have long argued that Blue Book was a cover story. I agree. That real researchers continued to classify programs under the name like Aquarius, Grudge, and others, and that Wright-Patterson's Air Force Base, specifically the facility that Neil once commanded, had been the custodial site for physical evidence of non-human technologies. In this theory, his disappearance is significant because he commanded AFRL during the period in which civil researchers believed that custodial arrangements for recovered materials had been reorganized. Basically they were taken, analyzed, shifted, and redirected to other sites. The new Area 51 and things like that. Which we can get into later, but not tonight. He might know where these things went. So a lot of people think he did. He might know what was moved. He might know what was found. And someone might have decided it was time to have that conversation with him privately. If this is true, almost certainly not, but it is a theory with internal consistencies, historical roots, and a very specific mechanism. It is not, as these things go, the craziest version of events. Now, this theory does not require aliens at all. And in some ways, it's the most alarming of the lot. It goes like this. China's intelligence services have identified a window of opportunity creating by current political dysfunction in the United States. Budget cuts to federal agencies, the dismantling of oversight structures, the general chaos in political movement have all created gaps in counterintelligence coverage. And in those gaps, MSS operatives have stepped in. They are not killing researchers, they are recruiting them. The missing scientists are missing because they choose to go. They have been given new identities, new lives, new facilities, and significant financial incentives to continue their research in China. The factory reset phone of Melissa would support this reading. The missing wallet, the revolver, suggests preparation for his journey. Not for a suicide. The fact that none of the missing persons have turned up dead anywhere, only the ones who definitely murdered have bodies, could suggest that the missing ones are alive, just elsewhere. This is a theory taken seriously enough that congressional representatives have raised it with the FBI. It is not a fringe position. It is a possibility of being actively considered by people whose job is to consider these things. That's the most frightening thing about it. Not the theory itself, but the fact that serious people think it's worth looking at. And frankly, I do too. There has been numerous cases of people who decided to defect. Remember the guy that was in the Army and he decided to run over to North Korea? I don't know. There's a lot of wild stuff going on, guys. Now, here's the one I can't actually stop thinking about. And I saved this one for last because it's the one that's been keeping me up a little bit. It's not because it's the most dramatic, it's because it's the most coherent. What if these events are unrelated? What if they are the product of multiple simultaneous independent processes? Some random violences, some mental health crisis, some foreign espionage, some accidents, in a pattern we are seeing is general coincidence, but the coincidence itself is what the adversaries are using. Meaning, what if someone, something, a foreign intelligence service, a domestic black program, someone is letting the pattern develop naturally and then nudging it, not causing all the disappearances, but perhaps causing one or two of the most strategic ones, and then allowing the noise to generate the coincidence to cover up the signal of the actual operation. In that scenario, you could never prove it because most of the events would be generally unconnected. The real targets, the real events, would be buried in the noise, the confusion, the conspiracy theorism, the congressional hearings. All of that serves in a purpose of making it impossible to identify what is actually happening. That theory requires smallest operational footprint. It requires the least coordination and is the hardest to disprove. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying if I was running an operation, this would be the one I'd choose. Now, I'm going to take a quick break and check on my son, and I'll be right back because we're going to get into the three-body problem next. This is a long one. Grab you a drink, grab you a smoke, stretch. You're going to need it.
I'm back. Thank everybody for staying. I had to check on my kid. Plus, I got dry mouth. I had to having somebody make me some coffee real quick. Now I'm going to try to get through this. There is some wild stuff in the next one. Now, after this, I suggest you guys go watch The Three Body Problem on Netflix. This will kind of give you an idea of the growing and general consensus on the internet. And a lot of people are drawing this conclusion because, well, they try to fit in 3 Atlas, they try to fit in the aliens, and they try to fit in the UFOs and everything else. And, well, this makes a lot of sense. Somehow it makes sense. And if anything has taught me about this year and last year, it seems like we are in the middle of a movie or a TV series. We are just living it out. So let's begin. Now, I want to talk to you about physics. I know you came to a conspiracy show and now you're getting physics. But I promise you're going to come back around. Everything comes back around. The three-body problem. Some of you know the Netflix show. Some of you know the book. It's excellent, and you should watch it, as I said. But tonight, we are talking about the actual problem. The mathematical physics problem. The one that has been solved for over 300 years. But I think, and I want to be clear, this is a thesis, not a fact. I think the three-body problem is the key to everything we have been talking about. Not metaphorically, but literal. In 1687, Isaac Newton published his laws of universal gravitation. With those laws, you could calculate with perfect precision the motion of two bodies orbiting each other under gravitational attraction. 2 planets, 2 stars, 2 objects. And if you know their masses, their positions, their speed at any given moment, you can calculate where they will be at any point in the future indefinitely with complete accuracy. This is determination. This is a clockwork universe. This is Newtonian mechanics working exactly as advertised. And then someone said, what about 3 bodies? What if you have 3 objects, 3 stars, 3 planets, 3 massive things, all exerting gravitational influences on each other simultaneously? The answer is it breaks. And it gets complicated. It breaks. The mathematics become, in most cases, fundamentally unsolvable. Not solvable because we don't have enough computation power. Unsolvable because the system is inherently chaotic. Because tiny variations in initial conditions produce wildly different outcomes over time. Because the future of behavior of the system cannot be predicted, even in principle, beyond certain timescales. This is not a gap in our knowledge that better scientists will eventually fix. This is fundamentally property of the universe. 3 bodies and gravitational interactions are, the mathematical sense, chaotic, unpredictable, and wild. There is no closed form solution to the three-body problem. There are only approximations, only simulations, only close enough for now. Henry Poincaré, I think he is a French guy, proved this in 1887, and this remains true today. Why this matters for civilization? The three-body problem matters from a practical standpoint. For spacecraft navigation, for understanding the behavior of the solar system, for predicting the long-still stability of planetary orbits. Our own solar system, it turns out, is not perfectly stable. Over billions of years, Jupiter's gravitational influence creates cascading effects that we can only model past certain timescales. But the three-body problem matters philosophically for a deeper reason. It is the point where classic physics admit defeat, where determination ends, where the universe says, no, you cannot know this. Not because you're not clever enough, because it cannot be known. Chaos theory emerges from insight, complexity science, the entire field of nonlinear dynamics. It all traces back to what he said, staring at the three orbiting bodies and realizing that the universe, in fundamental sense, is wild. Now, Lou Chixian, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, is the guy that wrote the book that the Netflix show was based on. He is a Chinese science fiction author. His trilogy, The Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest, Death's End, is, and I say this with full conviction, one of the most important works of speculative fiction written in the past 50 years. It has won the Hugo Award. Obama cited it. Barack Obama personally cited it as something he was reading. I want to add that during the Bush administration, the three-body problem was required reading. I don't know why, but it was. That was strange. The premise of the trilogy is an alien civilization, the Tellurians, live in a three-star system. 3 suns, 3 bodies. Their world is subject to the three-body problem. Unpredictable gravitational chaos that renders their planet uninhabitable. They have survived by developing an extreme militarized civilization capable of enduring chaotic eras, periods of catastrophe and inability, by placing their entire population in suspended animation and waiting for stable eras to return. When they detected a signal from Earth, a signal sent in the novel by a woman in the Cultural Revolution who hated humanity enough to invite the aliens, they began preparing to invade. But the most important idea of the trilogy is not the aliens. It's the second book, the central thesis, the Dark Forest Theory. I'm going to explain the Dark Forest Theory to you as best as I can, and then I'm going to tell you why I think it explains what we've been talking about all night. The Dark Forest Theory is articulated by a character named Lou. Is the answer to the Fermi paradox. The Fermi paradox is the question, if the universe is so vast and so old, and the conditions for life are apparently so common, then why haven't we detected any evidence of other intelligent civilizations? Where is everybody? I want to add, though, we think we may, be seeing those other civilizations flying around us. And keep that in mind, too.
The answer is this. The universe is like a dark forest. Every civilization is a hunter moving silently through the trees. Each hunter knows that other hunters exist, but they cannot know where those other hunters are friendly or hostile. And the universe is old enough that any sufficient advanced civilization has learn a fundamental lesson. That is only safe to assume that everyone is hostile. Here's why. Civilizations need resources. Resources are finite. The universe is expanding. Therefore, every civilization fundamentally long-term interest is the elimination of every potential competitor. Not because they are evil, because they are rational. Because a civilization that extends trust to an unknown others risk extinction if that trust is misplaced. And a civilization that eliminates potential competitors loses nothing except a potential ally, which, in the dark forest, is a small risk compared to risking or letting the competitor grow. So the universe is silent, not because there are no other civilizations, because every civilization that has long enough to learn to go silent, to hide, because broadcasting your existence is the most dangerous thing you can do. And because when you detect another civilization, you eliminate it quietly before it can become a threat. Now let's go back to our scientists. I want to be very clear about what I'm about to say. I'm not assessing that it's true. I'm presenting a framework, a way of looking at the events of the last 3 years that is somewhat coherent, even though I have dry mouth at the moment. Even if it's almost certainly wrong. Here's the framework. The researchers who have disappeared or died were collectively working on specific clusters of technology: anti-gravity, plasma physics, exotic materials, propulsions, near-Earth tracking, nuclear components, and, at least in the case of Sullivan, UAP research. The three-body problem gives us a way to understand why these clusters matter. If, and this is a big if, this is science fiction, if non-human intelligence exists, and if that intelligence has mastered the physics that our own researchers have only begun to approach or understand, then the researchers who are closing the gap are the perspective of that intelligence, a problem, which means they need to eliminate it. Not because they're building anything yet, but because in the dark forest framework, a civilization that is getting close to understanding your technology is a civilization that is getting close to challenging your position. And in the dark forest, you don't wait for that to happen. You act preventatively, proactively. Now, does this mean I think aliens are killing American scientists? No. I do not think that. I want to be clear. But here's what I do think. I think the people in certain compartmentalized programs within the American government believe, on the basis of evidence, and what we have not been shown, is that the universe is not as empty as it appears. I think some of those people believe that the technology that has been recovered, if technology has been recovered, represents a physics that is far advanced than anything our researchers have publicly achieved. And I think the question of what to do about that from a national security standpoint is generally one of the hardest questions any government has ever faced. Because the dark forest logic applies to nations as well as civilizations. If you know something your adversaries don't,
You protect that knowledge aggressively. Your own researchers are getting close to understanding it independently. Though legitimate scientific progress, you have a problem because you can't classify discoveries someone's made in their own lab. You can retroactively classify an epiphany. You can, however, make the person who had it unavailable. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying if that were the logic, these are exactly the people you would target. Now let me push the metaphor further, because I think it earns it. The three-body problem tells us a system of three interacting bodies cannot be solved, cannot be predicted. The fundamental chaotic past of certain timescales. What are the three bodies in our story? Body one, the United States government, the official public apparatus, Congress, the White House, the FBI, the holistic review, pretty serious stuff. The institution that doesn't know what it knows. Body two, the legacy programmings, the compartmentalized, the black budget operations that have, if the whistleblowers are to believe, have been operating outside oversight for decades. The part of the government that does not know what it knows and is very motivated to keep it that way. Body three, the external actor, which could be China, could be Russia. It could be a non-state actor. It could, if you're feeling brave, be something else entirely, like aliens. Three bodies, three actors, each exerting gravitational influence on the other, each unable to know or predict the behavior of the other two, each acting on incomplete information, each making decisions that alter the system in ways that can't be calculated past a certain horizon. The disappearances are not the result of clean, predictable, controlled operations. They are results of chaotic multi-actor systems in which each player is reacting to others in real time without perfect information, producing outcomes that one of them fully intended. The three-body problem says you cannot solve this. You can only model it, approximate for now. And that's exactly what the FBI is doing. That's exactly what Congress is doing. That is exactly what we are doing in this room tonight. Modeling, approximating, with incomplete information in the dark. There's one more thing from the trilogy that I want to bring up, because I think it's the most important thing. In the dark forest, humanity's response to the threat is to put humanity's survival in the hands of four individuals who were given unlimited resources and unique privileges of keeping their true plans completely secret, not from the enemy, not from everyone, including their own governments. The logic is, if the enemy can read your thoughts, and the aliens in the novel can through technology, then only way to develop a strategy that can counter is to keep it inside one person's head, where no communication, no transmission, no leak is possible. One of the individuals essentially destroys himself and his relations, spending decades on the apparent insane strategy, protecting a secret so deep that he himself lost track of whether he believes in it or not. I wonder sometimes whether there are people in the real world who have, in a sense, know something or believe they know something so dangerous they have spent their careers protecting it at a cost of everything else, who have built walls so thick that even people closest to them can't get through. I wonder if some of these people on this list we read tonight, in some sense, are keeping a secret that would be keeping them. And I wonder what it costs them. Okay. The last section. And I promise we are going to end in a place that is worth arriving at. Let's be honest about what we do know. I've spent a few hours talking through 13 cases, through 40 others. I plan to talk about more tomorrow. The major cases, the space framework, a Chinese science fiction novel, and let me tell you what I actually believe. I believe some of these people died of causes unconnected to their work. Random violence, mental health crisis, and accidents. America is a country where those things happen with terrible frequency. And working in aerospace does not make you immune. I believe some of them may have been targeted. I don't know by whom. I don't know why. I don't have enough information to say yet. But I'm looking. I'll always be looking. I've done the same job for 30 years, and it's this one. I believe there are programmings within the American government that operate beyond ordinary oversight. I believe those deal with information about UAPs that have not been disclosed to the public. I believe this because multiple people with security clearances under oath with careers and reputations at stake have testified to it before Congress. I do not know what that information is. I do not know whether it constitutes evidence of non-human intelligence. I am genuinely uncertain. But I feel there is something out there. I feel there is something unique. I feel there is an alien presence. I believe the three-body problem, as physics and as a metaphor, is one of the most important ideas for understanding the moment we are living in. Not because it proves anything about aliens, because it proves something about complexity, about the limits of knowledge, about what happens when multiple powerful actors with incomplete information interact in a chaotic system. That is the world. That is always the world. And right now, it feels more true than usual. Here's the thing that nobody wants to say. Here's the thing I think nobody wants to say on television, in a congressional hearing, or in a think piece, or on the internet. If non-human intelligence exists, if at some point in the last 80 years, the United States government has acquired physical evidence of that, then every frame we have for understanding our place in the universe is wrong. Not incomplete, but wrong. The dark forest scenario, the idea that the universe is full of civilizations hiding from each other, eliminating each other when they get too close, is one of the most frightening possible answers to the FEMA paradox. Not because of the aliens, but because of what it says about us. If the dark forest is true, then our impulses to reach out, to broadcast, to announce ourselves, to say we're here, which is what the Voyager was, and what the Archibo message was, what SETI, that impulse is suicidal, have been painting a target on ourselves for 80 years. We're literally waving our hands saying we're here. And if we got a message back, if something found us, and I think it did, and the question of what to do about that is not a scientific question or a political question, it's an existential one. It's the hardest question any group of humans has ever asked. What do you tell the world? When? How? What do you do if the answer to are we alone is no, and also they are not friendly? I think some of the silence, the official, the institution,
The impenetrable silence around UAP research comes from an evil intent, but from a general terror. Not a terror of discovery, the terror of disclosure. And I think people will die because of that terror. Of having to tell 7 billion people that everything they thought they knew about the universe is wrong. I want you to sleep on that tonight. That is the burden that would break most institutions. And I think it has. I want to take a moment to talk about something that gets lost in all of this. There are families. Michael has a daughter who, 3 years after his father's death, had not received a single phone call from an elected official or federal agency asking about what happened to him. A daughter who is now watching his name appear on congressional hearings, White House press briefings, Netflix articles, and shows like this one. Monica, family has spent nearly a year not knowing where she is. 30 feet, she waved, she smiled, and she was gone. Neil's family is asking correctly, I think, for the UFO community to stop treating her missing father as evidence for their theories. His sister is not asking us to stop looking for him. She is asking us to remember that he is a person, not a symbol, guys. Matthew was 39 years old. He had his whole career ahead of him. He was going to say something, testify to something he believed. Enough to risk saying, and I guess he risked his life. And 2 weeks before that, he could say it. He was dead. Whatever the explanation for any of these cases, the statistics, the espionage, the accident, the mental health, or something we haven't thought of, the people in them were real. They had lives. They had families who are still waiting, who are still grieving, who are still watching as their loved ones become hashtags and talking points and characters in a 4-hour show at a fringe theater. I include myself in this. I'm doing exactly that. I know I am doing it. I know what I'm doing. But I think it is worth doing. But I want to be honest about it. The show is called The Vanishing. And The Vanishing is a political story, and a scientific story, and a conspiracy story. But first, it is a human story about people who got up one morning and didn't come back. That can happen to any of us. The thing that matters most, and the thing that is easiest to forget, you're deep in the strain and the attacks and the theories. Now, what do we do know? I hope this is the practical section of this podcast, because I believe the ending of the show should be something actionable. What do we actually do about all of this? Option 1, nothing. This is statistically the most popular option. You go home, you watch a Netflix show, you tell your friends you saw a thing, the White House conducts its holistic review, the FBI looks at it from a high angle, Congress holds some hearings, nothing changes, the next scientist disappears, another after that, and another after that, and we have another show about them. This is the dark force equilibrium, silence, powerless, the system in stasis. Option 2, demand disclosure. This is what the UA community has been doing for decades. And credit where it's due, it's slowly working. David Grush testified before Congress. Arrow office exists. I don't trust them.
The UAP Disclosure Act has been drafted and argued over, and they're still drafting new parts of it, and I don't know, it's a mess. There are now more members of Congress willing to say the words unidentified aerial phenomena. Keep in mind it used to be UFO, and before that it used to be something else. Everyone laughs and changes it. There's people who believe it, and there's people who've seen them. But there's also people that can say those words without laughing and are worried. This is progress. It's slow. It's grinding. It's an institutional progress, but progress. Some of it may be modified. Some of it may be directed. They know they got to give us some. The argument for disclosure, even partial, even carefully managed, and that alternative is worse. The government can keep secrets indefinitely from its own people. It's a government that can't be trusted. And a government that cannot be trusted cannot function as a democracy. The secret keeps metastasizing. It touches more people. It compromises more institutions. It produces more situations where researchers in sensitive fields end up on lists like the one we have read tonight. Option 3. Take the three body problem seriously as its framework for national security. This is the one I actually believe in. A chaotic system we're in, multiple actors, incomplete information, unpredictable interactions. It's not going to become more stable by pretending it is simply than it is. It's a response to the chaos. The ability to respond quickly, intelligently to new information, even when that information is incomplete. However, the United States government is not currently demonstrating that ability. The last one was not able to demonstrate that. The White House press secretary hadn't spoken to anyone about it. The president called pretty serious stuff. The FBI is conducting a holistic review. This is a chaotic system, and it's a very slow response. Read the books, because I genuinely believe that science fiction author writing in Chinese, published in English in 2014, understand the fundamental shape of the situation that we are living in now. I don't know why. A Dark Forest is not a comforting book, because it does not end with hope. But it is an honest book. And I think honesty about the shape of the situation is what we need right now. Not reassurance, not dismissal, honesty. Something is happening, and I think we're living through something we are not prepared for. And maybe some sci-fi writer got it right. I started this show by saying paranoia is both a superpower and a trap. I want to end it by refining that a little. Paranoia is the worst form. It's a closed system. It explains everything. It is unplausible. No evidence can disprove it. It's because every piece of the counter evidence becomes part of the conspiracy. That is the trap. But in the best form, the most useful form, paranoia is a posture of alertness, a refusal to accept the official version as the complete version, a willingness to form a thread, to ask the uncomfortable questions as we have tonight, to sit with uncertainty rather than resolve it prematurely, to either believe or dismissal. 13 people, some of them probably victims of coincidence. Some of them may be victims of something else. We do not know. The White House does not know. The FBI is finding out. I hope. What we know is these are real people. They were doing real work. The work was fields that matter. Propulsion,
plasma physics, exotic materials, nuclear weapons, near-Earth objects, intelligence about UAP, and now they're gone. The three-body problem tells us the system cannot be solved. But don't stop looking. Even the guy who said the system could not be solved kept working, kept looking. The French guy I was talking about back in the 1800s. He kept developing mathematics of chaos. Mathematics so complex. There's some of the ones we still use today. That's what tonight has been about. A description of the shape. I don't know what happened to Monica, 30 feet from her friend, in a national forest on Tuesday in June 2025. I don't know what happened to Neil. I don't know what happened to Matthew. Or if he lost a personal battle that had nothing to do with anything that he was about to talk about. But I do know their names. And I think knowing their names matter. I think the act of saying them in a room together is not nothing. Thank you for staying. If you're driving, drive safe. If you're home, hug and kiss a loved one. And for God's sake, keep looking up. Stay paranoid, my friends, and good night. I will see you tomorrow.